Welcome to a journey back in time, to an era when winter was not merely a season but a profound test of human resilience and community bonds. We are traveling together to medieval Europe, somewhere between the years 1000 and 1400, when the world moved to different rhythms and winter held a power over daily life that we can barely imagine today. Picture, if you will, the landscape of medieval Europe as autumn faded into winter's approach. The countryside stretched endlessly, dotted with small villages whose wooden houses clustered together like protective siblings. These settlements were islands of human warmth in a vast sea of wilderness, connected by muddy tracks that would soon become frozen pathways under winter's transforming touch. The medieval world was primarily agricultural, its heartbeat synchronized with the seasons in ways that urban life has long forgotten. As summer's abundance gave way to autumn's harvest, entire communities worked together in a dance of preparation that had been perfected over countless generations. Every family knew that winter's arrival was not simply an inconvenience to be endured with modern heating and grocery stores, but a season that demanded months of careful planning and community cooperation. In these times, the majority of people lived as peasants, working small plots of land under the feudal system. Their homes were simple structures, typically built with timber frames and filled with a mixture of mud, straw, and animal dung called wattle and daub. The roofs were thatched with straw or reeds, creating a golden crown that would soon be blanketed in snow. These buildings were designed with winter survival in mind, their walls thick enough to provide insulation, their windows small to conserve precious heat. The medieval village was a microcosm of survival strategy. The church stood at its heart, not only as a spiritual center but as a massive stone structure that could provide shelter during the harshest storms. Around it clustered the homes of peasants, the blacksmith's forge that would work overtime during winter preparing tools and horseshoes, the mill that would grind the precious grain stores, and the manor house where the local lord resided, planning the distribution of resources that would keep the community alive through the dark months. As we imagine walking through such a village in late autumn, we can sense the anticipation in the air. Wood piles grow taller beside each home, carefully stacked to allow air circulation while protecting the precious fuel from moisture. Women move between houses, sharing techniques for preserving food, their knowledge passed down through generations of mothers and daughters who understood that creativity in food preservation could mean the difference between a well-fed family and one that struggled through the hungry months. The forests that surrounded these communities were vast and mysterious, filled with wildlife that would become increasingly important as winter protein sources. Deer, wild boar, rabbits, and birds provided meat for those with hunting rights, while the trees themselves offered not just firewood but materials for countless winter crafts and repairs. Every part of the forest was utilized, from the nuts and berries gathered in autumn to the medicinal plants that wise women collected and dried for winter healing. Rivers and streams played crucial roles in medieval winter survival. Before freezing, they provided the last opportunities for extensive laundry washing, as winter washing would become a sporadic and challenging task. Mills positioned along these waterways worked frantically to process grain before ice made their wheels immobile. The sound of rushing water would soon be replaced by the profound silence of ice, transforming the landscape into a crystalline wonder that was both beautiful and forbidding. Trade and commerce took on different rhythms as winter approached. Merchants hurried to complete their long-distance journeys before roads became impassable. Markets bustled with final exchanges of goods, as communities stocked up on salt for preservation, iron for tools, and the occasional luxury items that would provide comfort during the long, dark months. The great fairs that had brought distant communities together throughout the warmer months now prepared to close until spring's return. The medieval understanding of time itself was intimately connected to seasonal changes. Without clocks as we know them, communities marked time by the church bells that rang for prayers, the position of the sun, and the gradual changes in daylight that signaled winter's deepening grip. As days shortened, the rhythm of life adjusted accordingly, with more activities concentrated in the precious hours of daylight and long evenings devoted to indoor crafts and storytelling. In monasteries across the landscape, monks prepared for a different kind of winter experience. These religious communities had developed sophisticated systems for winter survival, with extensive libraries heated by carefully maintained fires, workshops for copying manuscripts, and gardens designed to provide sustenance through careful preservation techniques. The monastery's bells would continue to mark the hours throughout winter, providing a sense of continuity and spiritual rhythm even in the darkest months. The nobility prepared for winter in their own distinctive ways. Castle walls that provided protection from human enemies also offered shelter from winter storms. Great halls would be prepared for the season's indoor activities, with tapestries hung to provide additional insulation and massive fireplaces readied for the constant fires that would be needed. The medieval castle was designed as much for winter survival as for defense, its thick walls and strategic design creating microclimates that could sustain life through the harshest weather. As we settle into this historical understanding, we begin to appreciate the profound human experiences that shaped medieval winter life. These were not simply harsh conditions to be endured, but complex social and cultural experiences that brought communities together, tested human ingenuity, and created bonds that sustained civilizations through their most challenging seasons. The medieval winter was brutal, yes, but it was also transformative, teaching lessons about resilience, community, and the deep satisfaction that comes from working together to overcome nature's greatest challenges. As summer's warmth begins its gentle retreat and autumn paints the medieval landscape in brilliant golds and deep crimsons, entire communities transform into bustling centers of preparation. This is perhaps the most crucial time of the year, when the success or failure of winter survival depends entirely on the wisdom, hard work, and cooperation of every village member. The harvest season arrives like a great celebration mixed with urgent purpose. Fields that have been tended throughout the growing season now offer their bounty, but this gift comes with a pressing deadline. Every grain of wheat, every root vegetable, every apple hanging from carefully cultivated trees must be gathered before the first hard frost transforms abundance into loss. Families work from dawn until darkness, their movements efficient and practiced, hands that know exactly how to judge ripeness and quality through generations of inherited knowledge. In the fields, men wield scythes with rhythmic precision, their blades cutting through grain stalks in sweeping arcs that create satisfying whispers as wheat falls in neat rows. Behind them, women and children gather the fallen grain into bundles, their fingers quick and sure despite the repetitive nature of the work. This is meditation through motion, the entire community synchronized in a dance of survival that connects them directly to the earth's generosity. The threshing that follows harvest is equally methodical and strangely soothing. Grain is spread on hard-packed earth or wooden floors, then beaten with flails until the precious kernels separate from their stalks. The rhythmic sound of flails hitting grain creates a percussion that echoes through villages, a drumbeat of preparation that signals successful harvest. Children learn to winnow, tossing grain and chaff into the air while gentle breezes carry away the lighter debris, leaving behind the heavy, nutritious kernels that will sustain life through winter's demands. Root vegetables require their own special attention as autumn progresses. Turnips, parsnips, and onions must be carefully excavated from the earth, their soil gently brushed away before they are sorted by size and quality. The largest, most perfect specimens are selected for immediate consumption, while smaller or slightly damaged ones are prepared for various preservation methods. Nothing is wasted in this world where abundance and scarcity dance together in seasonal cycles. Apples hang heavy on trees throughout the medieval countryside, their harvest providing both immediate nourishment and long-term storage opportunities. Families work together to pick these fruits, carefully handling each apple to avoid bruising that could lead to rot. The perfect apples are wrapped individually in cloth and stored in cool cellars, while damaged ones are immediately processed into ciders and preserves that will provide vitamins and calories throughout the dark months. The preservation of meat becomes a community-wide endeavor as autumn deepens. Pigs that have been fattened throughout the summer on acorns and kitchen scraps are now ready for slaughter, their timing carefully calculated to coincide with the first consistently cold weather that will help preserve the meat. The process of butchering is both practical necessity and social event, with neighbors helping neighbors in a reciprocal system that ensures no family faces this massive task alone. Every part of the slaughtered animals is utilized with creative efficiency. The meat is cut into portions for immediate consumption and long-term preservation. Some pieces are packed in salt, others are hung in smokehouses where they will cure slowly over winter fires. Fat is rendered into lard for cooking and preservation, while bones are saved for broths that will provide essential nutrients during the lean months. Even the blood is preserved in various forms, creating puddings and sausages that maximize nutritional value. Smoking houses throughout medieval villages work continuously during this preparation period, their chimneys sending up steady streams of aromatic smoke that signal successful preservation in progress. The process of smoking meat requires constant attention and skilled knowledge of temperature and timing, creating products that will remain safe and nutritious for months. The smell of hickory and oak smoke becomes the autumn perfume of medieval communities, a comforting reminder of security being built one carefully smoked ham at a time. Wild foods receive equal attention from medieval families preparing for winter. Nuts are gathered from forest floors, their shells protecting the rich proteins and fats that will supplement stored grains. Mushrooms that flourish in autumn's dampness are carefully identified by those with generational knowledge, then dried on strings in sunny windows until they become leathery treasures that will flavor winter soups. Berries that have survived early frosts are collected and processed into preserves, their natural sugars concentrated through careful cooking. Medicinal plants command special reverence during autumn preparation. Wise women who serve as village healers work tirelessly to gather and dry the herbs that will treat winter ailments. Willow bark for pain relief, elderflowers for respiratory issues, and countless other plants are harvested at their peak potency, then dried in carefully ventilated spaces where they can maintain their healing properties throughout the cold months. Textile production intensifies as families prepare for winter's clothing demands. Sheep that have grown thick wool throughout the summer are sheared, their fleeces becoming the raw material for warm winter garments. The process of cleaning, carding, spinning, and weaving wool requires skilled hands and patient dedication, but the resulting cloth will literally mean the difference between comfort and suffering during the coldest weather. Fuel gathering becomes perhaps the most critical preparation activity. Families venture into forests with carts and determination, collecting fallen branches, cutting dead trees, and splitting logs into sizes appropriate for different heating needs. The woodpile beside each home grows throughout autumn, carefully stacked to allow air circulation while protecting the precious fuel from rain and snow. Coal, where available, is purchased and stored, its concentrated energy offering reliable heat for the most brutal weather. Food storage cellars and pantries are prepared with meticulous care. Root vegetables are bedded in sand or straw to prevent freezing and decay. Grains are stored in sealed containers that protect them from moisture and rodents. Preserved meats hang from rafters in cool, dry spaces where air circulation prevents spoilage. Every preserved food item represents hours of labor and generations of accumulated wisdom about survival. As autumn's preparation period reaches its climax, communities pause to acknowledge their collective effort. The hard work of harvest and preservation creates bonds between neighbors that will sustain them through winter's isolation. Stories are shared about preservation techniques, successful harvests are celebrated, and plans are made for sharing resources during the difficult months ahead. This is the foundation of medieval winter survival, not just individual preparation, but community resilience built through mutual support and shared knowledge. The transformation begins subtly, almost imperceptibly, in the pre-dawn hours of an autumn morning that feels different from all those that came before. The air carries a new crispness, a quality of stillness that seems to hold its breath in anticipation. As the first light of dawn touches the medieval landscape, it reveals the delicate artwork that winter has begun to create overnight. Frost appears first on the grass, each blade outlined in crystalline perfection as if touched by the most skilled artisan. The transformation is magical and peaceful, turning ordinary meadows into landscapes that sparkle like scattered diamonds in the early morning light. This first frost signals not an ending, but a beginning, winter's gentle announcement that the season of preparation is transitioning into the season of endurance and contemplation. Medieval villagers wake to discover their world transformed by this overnight magic. Windows that were clear the evening before now display intricate patterns of ice crystals, natural art created by the interaction of warm breath inside homes and the new cold outside. These patterns are unique and temporary, lasting only until the sun's warmth melts them back into clear glass, teaching daily lessons about beauty's ephemeral nature. The gardens that provided fresh vegetables throughout the growing season now show winter's first influence. Hardy plants like kale and Brussels sprouts actually improve in flavor after experiencing frost, their natural sugars concentrating in response to the cold. Medieval gardeners understand this phenomenon, timing their final harvests to take advantage of frost's transformative power on certain crops. Puddles and shallow streams begin their gradual transition to ice, starting with thin films that form overnight and melt during the day. Children discover the joy of breaking through these delicate ice sheets with sticks and stones, not yet understanding that they are witnessing the beginning of a process that will soon lock streams and rivers in solid ice for months. The sound of cracking ice becomes a new element in the daily symphony of village life. Animals respond to the first frost with ancient instincts that guide their preparation for the challenging months ahead. Horses grow thicker coats, their bodies naturally adapting to provide better insulation. Cattle cluster together more closely, sharing body heat in an unconscious demonstration of survival wisdom. Wild creatures become more active during daylight hours, frantically gathering the last available food sources before winter's grip tightens. The first frost brings a particular quality of silence to the medieval world. Gone are the busy sounds of insects that filled summer evenings, replaced by a profound quiet that allows other sounds to emerge with new clarity. The crack of tree branches adjusting to temperature changes, the distant howl of wolves preparing for winter hunting, and the soft sound of wind moving through bare tree branches create a new acoustic landscape that speaks of winter's approaching presence. Medieval farmers used the first frost as a signal to complete their final agricultural tasks. Root vegetables still in the ground are hurriedly harvested, as repeated freezing and thawing can damage their texture and nutritional value. The last apples clinging to trees are gathered, their frost-sweetened flesh providing a final gift from the growing season. Garden beds are cleared and prepared for their winter rest, with crop residues composted to enrich the soil for next year's planting. Hunting takes on new urgency as the first frost signals the beginning of winter hunting season. Wild animals are at their peak condition, having fattened themselves on autumn's abundance, making this an ideal time for hunters to secure protein for the lean months ahead. The clear, crisp air that accompanies early winter weather also makes tracking easier, as animal tracks show clearly in morning frost and early snow. The first frost transforms the daily rhythms of medieval life in subtle but significant ways. Mornings require more time for basic tasks as water buckets develop thin layers of ice that must be broken before use. Breathing creates visible clouds of vapor, a constant reminder of the temperature change that affects everything from animal care to the efficiency of outdoor work. Yet these changes come gradually, allowing communities to adapt naturally to winter's requirements. Homes begin their winter transformation as families respond to the first frost's message. Additional blankets are retrieved from storage and aired in the crisp autumn sunshine. Firewood that has been cut and stacked throughout autumn is moved closer to homes for convenient access during storms. Windows are checked for gaps that might allow precious heat to escape, with available materials used to improve insulation. The first frost often creates some of the most beautiful mornings of the year, when the entire landscape is transformed into a crystalline wonderland that demonstrates nature's artistic capabilities. Medieval people, living closer to natural rhythms than modern populations, develop a deep appreciation for these moments of beauty that break the routine of survival preparation. The sight of frost-covered fields stretching toward the horizon creates a sense of peaceful expansiveness that calms the mind and prepares the spirit for winter's contemplative season. Children experience the first frost with wonder and excitement, discovering new ways to play in a transformed environment. They learn to slide on frost-covered surfaces, create temporary art by breathing on frost-covered windows, and help adults with the increased daily tasks that cold weather requires. This early introduction to winter's challenges teaches practical skills while building appreciation for seasonal changes. Monastery bells take on a different quality in the crisp air that accompanies first frost, their sound carrying farther and ringing more clearly than in the humid air of summer. Medieval communities that rely on these bells for timekeeping notice this acoustic change, using it as another natural calendar marker that helps them track seasonal progression without mechanical clocks. The first frost also marks the beginning of a shift in social patterns within medieval communities. As outdoor work becomes less comfortable, people begin spending more time indoors, leading to increased opportunities for crafts, storytelling, and community bonding. The shared experience of adapting to colder weather creates common challenges that bring neighbors together in mutual support and problem-solving. Medical practitioners in medieval communities recognized the first frost as a signal to prepare for the ailments that accompany colder weather. Supplies of warming herbs are checked and organized, techniques for treating cold-related conditions are reviewed, and plans are made for maintaining health during the challenging months ahead. The wisdom of traditional medicine becomes particularly important as communities prepare to rely on local resources for healing. As the sun sets on days marked by first frost, families gather around fires that will soon become constant companions rather than occasional luxuries. The evening meal takes on new warmth and significance as hot food becomes not just nourishment but comfort against the growing cold. These are the evenings that begin winter's rhythm of increased family time, shared warmth, and collective preparation for the challenges and contemplative opportunities that lie ahead. As December settles over the medieval landscape like a heavy, comfortable blanket, the world enters a profound transformation that affects every aspect of daily life. This is not merely a change in weather, but a complete shift in the rhythm of existence, where communities that have spent months preparing for winter finally settle into the season's unique demands and unexpected gifts. The daylight hours shrink dramatically, creating a daily cycle that modern people struggle to imagine. By December's depth, medieval villagers wake in darkness, work through brief hours of precious daylight, and return to darkness while evening is still young. This rhythm, rather than feeling oppressive, creates a natural flow that encourages contemplation, family bonding, and the development of indoor skills that flourish during winter's enforced intimacy. Snow begins to accumulate in earnest during December, transforming the familiar landscape into something altogether different and magical. The medieval world, with its lack of modern snow removal equipment, adapts to snow rather than fighting it. Paths between buildings are trampled into walkways by daily use, creating a network of compressed snow highways that connect essential locations. The beauty of fresh snow covering familiar sights brings daily moments of wonder that break the routine of survival tasks. Home fires become the heartbeat of medieval winter life during December. The careful management of fire requires constant attention and becomes a skill that separates comfortable families from those who struggle with cold. Women develop intimate knowledge of different wood types and their burning characteristics, understanding that oak provides long, steady heat while birch burns bright and quick for morning warmth. The sound of crackling fires becomes the soundtrack of winter life, a comforting constant that accompanies every indoor activity. Food preparation takes on new rhythms as families begin using their carefully preserved stores. The art of making satisfying meals from preserved ingredients becomes a creative challenge that brings out culinary innovation. Root vegetables stored in cellars are retrieved daily and prepared in countless ways that maximize nutrition and flavor. The smell of winter cooking, root vegetable stews, bread baked with preserved grains, and meat dishes enhanced with dried herbs, creates comforting aromas that make homes feel warm and welcoming despite the cold outside. December brings the celebration of Christmas, which in medieval times extends far beyond a single day into a season of community gathering and spiritual reflection. Despite winter's challenges, or perhaps because of them, these celebrations take on profound meaning for communities that depend entirely on each other for survival. Church services become gathering places where the warmth of shared body heat combines with the warmth of shared faith to create comfort that transcends physical conditions. The indoor crafts that sustain medieval families through winter reach their peak productivity during December. Women spin wool into yarn while sitting close to fires, their hands working steadily while they share stories and maintain social connections despite the isolation imposed by weather. Men carve wooden tools and toys, repair leather goods, and maintain metal implements, using the extended indoor time to ensure that equipment will be ready for spring's demands. Children adapt to winter's restrictions with remarkable creativity, developing indoor games and activities that require minimal space and resources. Storytelling becomes a highly valued skill, with the best storytellers in each community drawing audiences that include adults grateful for entertainment during long winter evenings. These stories serve multiple purposes, providing entertainment while also preserving community history and cultural values. The management of livestock during December requires daily attention and creative problem solving. Animals must be fed from carefully rationed hay stores, watered despite frozen water sources, and kept warm enough to survive while not wasting precious fuel on heating animal shelters. The daily routine of animal care provides structure to winter days while ensuring that families will have eggs, milk, and eventually meat to supplement their preserved food stores. Medieval communities during December develop systems of mutual support that demonstrate the best of human nature under challenging conditions. Neighbors check on each other regularly, sharing resources when one family's supplies run low and pooling labor for tasks too difficult for individual families to manage alone. These support networks become the foundation of winter survival, proving that community cooperation can overcome individual hardship. The quality of light during December's short days takes on special significance for medieval communities. The brief hours of daylight are treasured and utilized efficiently, with outdoor tasks scheduled to take advantage of every minute of natural light. When candles and oil lamps must be lit for indoor work, they are used carefully and economically, creating intimate pools of warm light that define evening activities around their gentle glow. December weather brings variety that keeps medieval life interesting despite its challenges. Some days feature brilliant sunshine that makes snow sparkle like scattered jewels, creating beauty that lifts spirits despite the cold. Other days bring gentle snowfall that muffles sound and creates a peaceful, contemplative atmosphere perfect for indoor reflection. Storm days, while challenging, create a sense of adventure and accomplishment when families successfully weather them together. The medieval understanding of December as part of a larger seasonal cycle helps communities maintain perspective during difficult days. This is not an endless winter, but a necessary season that will eventually give way to spring's renewal. The gradual lengthening of days after the winter solstice provides hope and anticipation that sustains spirits through the remaining cold months. Water management becomes a daily concern during December as temperatures consistently drop below freezing. Wells are protected from freezing through careful covering and the addition of straw for insulation. Ice must be broken daily on animal water sources, and families learn to melt snow and ice for household water needs. These tasks become routine but require constant attention to ensure adequate water supplies. The social dynamics of medieval communities shift during December as isolation increases the importance of maintaining good relationships with neighbors. Conflicts that might be easily resolved during seasons when people have more space and independence become more serious when families must depend on community cooperation for survival. Wise community leaders develop skills for mediating disputes and maintaining harmony during the challenging winter months. Medieval December also brings unique opportunities for learning and skill development. Young people use the extended indoor time to learn crafts from their elders, acquiring skills that will serve them throughout their lives. Reading and writing, for those fortunate enough to have access to literacy, become evening activities pursued by firelight. The contemplative nature of winter creates ideal conditions for developing intellectual and spiritual practices. As December progresses toward its end, medieval communities settle fully into winter's rhythm. The initial adjustment period is complete, routines are established, and families have adapted to the season's requirements. This settled feeling brings its own comfort, as people realize they have successfully navigated winter's early challenges and can face the remaining cold months with confidence and established systems of survival and mutual support. January arrives in the medieval world like a profound meditation on stillness and endurance. This is winter's deepest breath, the month when cold settles into the landscape with such completeness that it transforms not just the physical world but the very rhythm of human consciousness. The medieval experience of January teaches lessons about finding peace within limitation and discovering the unexpected gifts that come from accepting nature's most challenging season. The cold during medieval January reaches levels that modern heated homes cannot replicate. It is a cold that penetrates everything, seeping through the thickest walls, finding gaps in the most carefully constructed defenses, and demanding constant respect and attention. Yet within this challenge lies a profound beauty, as communities learn to work with winter rather than simply enduring it, developing rhythms of life that acknowledge the season's power while finding warmth and comfort within its embrace. Morning routines during January become elaborate rituals of preparation and warming. Families wake to homes where their breath creates visible clouds, where water left standing overnight has frozen solid, and where the simple act of getting dressed requires careful planning and quick movement. Yet these mornings also bring unique beauties, as frost patterns on windows create daily masterpieces of natural art, and the quality of light filtering through ice crystals transforms ordinary rooms into magical spaces. The sounds of medieval January create a completely different acoustic environment from any other season. The snow that blankets everything acts as natural insulation, muffling distant sounds while making nearby noises seem unusually clear and intimate. Footsteps crunch with satisfying precision, voices carry with bell-like clarity in the cold air, and the crack of settling timbers creates a percussion that marks time throughout long winter days. Fire management during January becomes an art form that requires constant attention and deep understanding. Families develop intimate relationships with their hearths, learning to read the language of flames and coals, understanding which combinations of wood create the most efficient heat, and developing systems for maintaining continuous warmth without exhausting fuel supplies. The hypnotic dance of flames becomes a source of contemplation and comfort that helps pass the long hours of enforced indoor time. Food during January takes on profound significance as families work through their carefully preserved stores. Meals become exercises in creativity and gratitude, as cooks transform dried, salted, and stored ingredients into warming dishes that provide both nutrition and comfort. The smell of winter cooking fills homes with aromas that combat the cold and create sensory environments of warmth and security. Hot broths made from preserved bones become liquid comfort that warms from the inside out. The social dynamics of medieval communities during January develop unique characteristics born from shared challenge and mutual dependence. Neighbors who might have taken each other for granted during easier seasons now become essential allies in survival. Stories are shared around fires, creating libraries of oral tradition that preserve community history while providing entertainment during long evenings. The bonds formed during January's trials often last lifetimes. January brings unique opportunities for contemplation and spiritual development that other seasons cannot provide. The enforced stillness and reduced external stimulation create ideal conditions for meditation, prayer, and deep reflection. Medieval people, living closer to natural rhythms than modern populations, often report that January provides their most profound spiritual experiences, as the stripped-down nature of winter living removes distractions and focuses attention on essential truths. Craftwork during January reaches levels of refinement and creativity that demonstrate human adaptability and resilience. With extended time indoors and the need to remain productive, artisans develop skills and create works of remarkable beauty and functionality. Women produce textiles of extraordinary quality, working by firelight to create garments that combine practicality with aesthetic beauty. Men carve intricate wooden objects and repair tools with meticulous attention to detail. The management of livestock during January requires daily heroism that often goes unrecognized but represents the difference between prosperity and starvation. Animals must be checked multiple times daily, their shelters maintained despite brutal weather, and their needs met even when human comfort must be sacrificed. The relationship between humans and animals during winter demonstrates interdependence at its most essential level. Children during medieval January develop resilience and creativity that shapes their characters for life. Confined to smaller spaces and required to contribute to family survival, they learn skills and develop attitudes that serve them well in a world where cooperation and resourcefulness are essential for success. Play becomes more inventive, learning more focused, and family bonds deeper as shared challenges create shared accomplishments. The beauty of January in medieval settings provides daily reminders that even the harshest conditions can create moments of transcendent loveliness. Icicles hanging from eaves become natural sculptures that change daily with weather conditions. Snow-covered trees transform familiar landscapes into fairy tale settings that inspire wonder despite the practical challenges they represent. Sunrise and sunset, framed by winter's crystal clarity, provide moments of beauty that lift spirits and remind viewers of nature's artistic power. Medical knowledge during January becomes crucial as communities deal with the health challenges that accompany extreme cold. Traditional remedies for frostbite, respiratory ailments, and the depression that can accompany extended darkness become essential tools for maintaining community health. Wise women and men who serve as healers develop techniques for keeping people healthy through winter's most challenging month. Water management during January requires daily innovation as normal sources freeze solid. Snow must be melted for drinking water, ice chopped from frozen streams for household use, and precious liquid carefully conserved to avoid waste. These tasks become routine but require constant attention and creative problem-solving when normal water sources become inaccessible. The psychological aspects of medieval January test human resilience while also building character and community bonds. The extended darkness and isolation can challenge mental health, but communities develop traditions and practices that combat winter depression and maintain morale. Storytelling, music, shared work, and religious observances create structure and meaning that help people maintain hope and enthusiasm despite challenging conditions. Navigation during January becomes an art form as familiar landmarks disappear under snow and normal paths become impassable. Medieval people develop skills for traveling safely in winter conditions, reading subtle signs in the landscape that remain visible despite dramatic changes in appearance. The ability to find one's way in winter becomes a valuable and respected skill that can mean the difference between safety and serious danger. As January progresses toward its end, medieval communities often experience a sense of accomplishment and deepening connection. Having successfully navigated winter's most challenging month, people develop confidence in their ability to handle whatever remaining challenges the season might bring. The bonds formed through shared struggle create social foundations that strengthen communities long after winter's end, while the skills developed through necessity become permanent additions to individual and collective knowledge. February in the medieval world represents winter's masterpiece of endurance, a month when the season's grip tightens with deceptive gentleness that conceals profound power. This is not the dramatic announcement of winter's arrival, nor the obvious harshness of January's deep cold, but rather a subtle, persistent test of human resilience that teaches communities the difference between mere survival and the art of thriving within limitation. The light during February begins its subtle but unmistakable shift toward spring, yet this change comes so gradually that medieval people learn to notice and celebrate the smallest daily victories against darkness. Each day brings perhaps a minute or two of additional daylight, changes so small they might go unnoticed by casual observation but profound in their psychological impact for communities that have lived through months of shortened days. The medieval awareness of these minute changes demonstrates a connection to natural rhythms that modern life rarely achieves. Snow during February takes on different characteristics than the dramatic storms of December and January. February snow often falls more gently but persistently, creating accumulations that build steadily rather than dramatically. This quiet, consistent snowfall creates a meditative quality to the season, as communities watch their world transform slowly and peacefully under winter's continuing artistry. The sound of falling snow becomes a constant companion, so soft it sometimes seems imagined rather than heard. Indoor life during February reaches a refined efficiency that demonstrates human adaptability at its finest. Families have spent months perfecting their systems for staying warm, fed, and entertained within limited spaces, and February represents the peak of these survival arts. Homes become perfectly organized for winter living, with every item having its place and every routine optimized for comfort and efficiency within winter's constraints. The preservation and preparation of food during February requires particular creativity as families work through supplies that have been stored since autumn's harvest. Cooks develop expertise in transforming aged and preserved ingredients into meals that provide not just nutrition but genuine pleasure and comfort. Root vegetables that have been stored in cellars for months are prepared in countless variations, each preparation technique designed to maximize both nutrition and flavor from ingredients that might seem monotonous to less skilled hands. Community relationships during February develop depths that other seasons rarely achieve. The continued dependence on neighbors for both practical survival and psychological support creates bonds that transcend casual friendship. Families learn to coordinate resources, share skills, and provide mutual assistance with a sophistication that demonstrates human social evolution under pressure. These relationships become the foundation of medieval community life, extending far beyond winter's end. Craftsmanship during February often produces the finest work of the entire year, as artisans have had months to perfect their techniques and develop ambitious projects. Women create textiles of extraordinary beauty and functionality, their spinning and weaving reaching levels of artistry that combine practical necessity with aesthetic achievement. Men produce wooden and metal objects that demonstrate mastery of their crafts, using the extended indoor time to create works that will serve their families for years while also providing pride in accomplishment. The spiritual dimensions of medieval February life take on particular significance as communities use the contemplative nature of the season for deep reflection and religious observance. The stripped-down nature of winter living removes many distractions, creating ideal conditions for prayer, meditation, and spiritual development. Churches become refuges not just from physical cold but from the spiritual challenges that can accompany extended isolation and hardship. Children during February demonstrate remarkable adaptability, having spent months developing indoor skills and entertainment that work within winter's limitations. Play becomes more sophisticated and creative, as young people invent games and activities that require minimal space and resources while providing genuine enjoyment. The bonds between siblings strengthen as shared challenges create shared accomplishments and mutual dependence. Animal care during February requires the pinnacle of husbandry skills, as livestock have been confined and dependent on human care for months. The daily routines of feeding, watering, and maintaining animals become exercises in dedication and skill that often determine whether families emerge from winter with productive livestock or face spring with diminished resources. The relationship between humans and animals during this time demonstrates interdependence at its most essential level. The management of fuel during February becomes a careful balance between comfort and conservation, as families must maintain warmth while ensuring their wood and other fuel supplies last through the remaining weeks of winter. This requires intimate knowledge of different wood types, efficient burning techniques, and creative approaches to maximizing heat while minimizing fuel consumption. The art of fire management becomes a crucial survival skill that separates comfortable families from those who struggle with cold. Water procurement during February often requires daily innovation as traditional sources remain frozen and snow provides the primary source of household water. Families develop efficient systems for melting snow and ice while conserving fuel, creating adequate water supplies for drinking, cooking, and essential cleaning. These systems become so routine that they appear effortless, yet they represent significant achievements in adaptation and efficiency. The psychology of February tests human resilience in subtle but profound ways. The extended darkness and isolation can create challenges to mental health that require community awareness and support systems. Medieval communities developed traditions and practices specifically designed to maintain morale and prevent the depression that can accompany extended winter confinement. Music, storytelling, shared work, and religious observances create structure and meaning that sustain spirits through difficult periods. Healthcare during February relies heavily on traditional knowledge and carefully preserved medicines, as communities must address winter-related ailments using only local resources. Respiratory problems, joint pain from cold, and injuries from winter work require treatment using herbs and techniques that have been developed over generations. The success of these treatments demonstrates the sophisticated medical knowledge that medieval communities possessed. The beauty of February provides daily reminders that even the most challenging seasons create moments of transcendent loveliness. Morning frost creates intricate patterns on windows that change daily with weather conditions. Snow-laden evergreen trees become natural sculptures that demonstrate nature's artistic capabilities. The quality of light during brief sunny periods creates illumination that seems to glow from within, transforming ordinary scenes into magical landscapes. Trade and communication during February virtually cease as travel becomes too dangerous and difficult for all but the most essential journeys. This isolation forces communities to become completely self-reliant, depending entirely on their own resources and skills for survival. The successful navigation of this isolation demonstrates the effectiveness of autumn's preparation and the strength of community cooperation developed throughout the winter months. February's weather patterns create unique challenges that require constant adaptation and problem-solving. Sudden warm spells can create dangerous ice conditions as melting and refreezing transform familiar surfaces into hazardous obstacles. Cold snaps can test heating systems and threaten stored foods. Wind storms can damage buildings and create drifts that block essential pathways. Each weather change requires community response and individual adaptation. As February progresses toward its end, medieval communities often experience a deepening sense of accomplishment and confidence. Having successfully navigated winter's most persistent challenges, people develop faith in their ability to handle whatever remaining trials the season might bring. The skills developed through months of practice become second nature, while the bonds formed through shared struggle create social foundations that will strengthen communities long after winter's end. March arrives in the medieval world like a gentle whisper of possibility, bringing changes so subtle they might escape notice yet profound enough to transform the entire psychological landscape of communities that have endured winter's long trial. This is the month when winter's absolute dominion begins its slow retreat, not through dramatic gesture but through countless small victories that accumulate into unmistakable evidence of seasonal change. The light during March undergoes transformation that affects every aspect of medieval life, bringing not just longer days but a different quality of illumination that seems to awaken hope after months of dormancy. Sunrise comes earlier each morning, not by dramatic leaps but through steady, measurable progress that provides daily confirmation of winter's weakening grip. Medieval people, finely attuned to natural rhythms through necessity and proximity, celebrate these minute changes with an appreciation that modern artificial lighting has made difficult to understand. Snow during March begins its complex dance between accumulation and retreat, creating landscapes that change daily as winter and spring engage in their ancient struggle for dominance. Some days bring fresh snowfall that reminds communities winter has not yet surrendered, while others feature temperatures warm enough to begin the slow process of melting that will eventually free the earth for spring's renewal. This daily uncertainty creates a sense of anticipation and hope that sustains spirits through the remaining challenges. The sound of melting becomes March's distinctive music, as icicles begin their slow drip and snow gradually releases its grip on rooftops and tree branches. This liquid percussion provides a constant reminder of change and progress, water moving again after months of frozen stillness. Medieval people developed the ability to read the weather and predict temperature changes simply by listening to the rhythm and intensity of melting water, turning survival necessity into a subtle art. Home maintenance during March requires attention to winter's accumulated effects while preparing for the demands of the coming growing season. Roofs that have supported heavy snow loads for months need inspection and repair where ice has created damage. Walls and foundations require checking for frost damage that might compromise structural integrity. These tasks, while challenging, provide purposeful activity that helps communities transition from winter's indoor focus to the outdoor work that spring will demand. Food supplies during March reach their most critical stage, as families work through stores that have sustained them for months while hoping for spring foods that remain weeks away from availability. This is traditionally the hungry gap, when preserved foods begin running low but fresh foods have not yet appeared. Medieval communities demonstrate remarkable creativity and cooperation during this challenging time, sharing resources and developing recipes that maximize nutrition from remaining supplies. The first signs of returning wildlife provide daily excitement and hope during March, as birds begin their migration back to northern territories and small animals emerge from winter hiding places. These signs of returning life create profound psychological benefits for communities that have lived through months of largely lifeless landscapes. Children particularly delight in spotting the first robin or hearing the first tentative bird songs that announce winter's approaching end. Community cooperation during March takes on new dimensions as families prepare for the transition from winter survival mode to spring's agricultural demands. Tools that have been maintained and repaired throughout winter are organized and prepared for farming activities. Seeds saved from the previous year's harvest are examined and prepared for planting. Plans are made for spring cleaning, building repairs, and all the activities that will burst forth once weather permits reliable outdoor work. The psychological impact of March creates profound changes in community mood and energy levels, as the certain knowledge that winter will end replaces the endurance mindset that has sustained people through the darkest months. Conversations shift from survival concerns to plans for spring and summer activities. Energy levels increase as bodies respond to lengthening daylight and the psychological boost of approaching change. Craftwork during March often focuses on completing winter projects while preparing tools and materials needed for spring activities. Women finish textile projects begun during winter's indoor time while also preparing spinning and weaving equipment for storage until next winter. Men complete woodworking and metalworking projects while also sharpening and repairing agricultural tools that will soon be needed for field work. The management of livestock during March requires careful attention as animals also respond to seasonal changes with increased activity and changing needs. Pregnant animals require special care as they prepare to give birth to spring offspring. All animals benefit from the psychological boost of longer days and gradually warming temperatures, but their increased activity also requires adjustments in feeding and housing arrangements. March weather creates unique challenges that test communities' adaptability and resilience in new ways. The combination of melting snow, occasional warm days, and persistent cold nights creates conditions that can be more challenging than winter's consistent cold. Mud seasons begin as frozen ground thaws during warm days but refreezes at night, creating surfaces that are both slippery and unstable. Traditional March celebrations in medieval communities often focus on marking winter's retreat and preparing for spring's arrival. These observances provide important psychological benefits, creating formal recognition of seasonal change while also strengthening community bonds through shared ritual and celebration. Religious observances during March often emphasize themes of renewal, hope, and gratitude for winter survival. The gradual exposure of landscape features that have been hidden under snow for months creates daily discoveries that delight and interest medieval communities. Paths that have been mere memories for months begin to reappear as snow melts. Gardens that seemed buried forever start showing the first hints of their buried treasures. These revelations provide constant entertainment and hope as familiar landscapes slowly re-emerge from winter's covering. Water management during March undergoes dramatic changes as melting snow and ice create abundant water supplies that replace the careful conservation required during deep winter. However, this abundance brings new challenges, as communities must manage spring runoff and flooding while also taking advantage of increased water availability for cleaning and other activities that have been limited during winter months. The health and medical aspects of March focus on helping communities transition from winter's confined living to spring's more active lifestyle. Bodies that have adapted to limited movement and indoor living need gradual conditioning for the physical demands that spring will bring. Traditional medicine also focuses on cleansing and renewal treatments that help people transition between seasons successfully. March's unique beauty provides daily reminders of nature's artistic capabilities during seasonal transition. The contrast between remaining snow and emerging earth creates landscapes of remarkable beauty and interest. Icicles grow larger as melting increases but temperatures remain cold enough to refreeze dripping water overnight. Bare tree branches begin showing subtle signs of swelling buds that promise eventual leafing. The social dynamics of March communities reflect the anticipation and hope that characterize the month, as people begin making plans and forming work groups for spring activities. Conversations shift from winter survival stories to plans for planting, building, and all the projects that warm weather will make possible. Marriage plans are often finalized during March for spring weddings when travel and celebration become feasible again. As March progresses toward its end and spring's official arrival, medieval communities experience a profound sense of accomplishment and renewal. Having successfully survived winter's complete trial, people emerge with strengthened skills, deeper community bonds, and renewed appreciation for seasonal cycles. The approaching spring represents not just the end of winter's challenges but the beginning of new opportunities for growth, prosperity, and community development. April arrives like a gentle awakening from winter's long dream, bringing the first unmistakable signs that the medieval world is ready to burst forth into new life and renewed activity. This is the month when winter's grip finally loosens enough to allow spring's tentative emergence, creating a daily experience of hope realized and promises fulfilled that transforms both landscape and human consciousness with profound and lasting effect. The warming trend during April becomes impossible to ignore or reverse, as daily temperatures rise enough to begin the great thaw that will free the earth for spring's agricultural renaissance. Medieval communities, having survived winter's complete trial, now face the equally demanding but more hopeful challenge of transitioning from survival mode to the active productivity that warm weather makes possible. This transition requires its own skills and community cooperation, different from winter's endurance but equally essential for success. Daylight during April extends dramatically, bringing not just longer days but a quality of light that seems to energize everything it touches. Medieval people, having lived through months of limited daylight, experienced these longer days as gifts of almost overwhelming generosity. The ability to accomplish outdoor work after the evening meal, something impossible for months, provides both practical benefits and psychological boosts that help communities prepare for spring's demanding schedule. The sounds of April create an entirely new acoustic environment as the muffled quiet of snow-covered landscapes gives way to the active symphony of returning life. Water moves everywhere as snow melts and streams reawaken, creating a constant background of flowing, dripping, and rushing that signals winter's retreat. Birds return in increasing numbers, their songs growing more complex and confident as they establish territories and prepare for nesting season. Snow during April becomes a retreating presence rather than an advancing threat, melting steadily and revealing landscapes that have been hidden for months. This daily revelation provides constant entertainment and hope, as familiar places re-emerge from winter's covering transformed by months of snow protection and the accumulated effects of freeze and thaw cycles. Gardens begin showing their first tentative signs of life as soil becomes visible and workable. The management of muddy conditions becomes April's primary challenge, as melting snow and spring rains create surfaces that are often more difficult to navigate than winter's frozen paths. Medieval communities developed techniques for dealing with mud seasons, creating temporary walkways and adapting transportation methods to handle conditions that can make travel treacherous despite the warming weather. These skills become essential for maintaining community connections during the transition period. Food supplies during April require careful management as families work through the last of their winter stores while waiting for spring foods to become available. Wild foods begin appearing as early plants emerge and become available for gathering, providing crucial nutrition during this traditionally difficult period. The knowledge of which plants are safe and nutritious becomes essential survival skill that often means the difference between adequate nutrition and hunger. April's weather patterns create unique beauty and challenges, as the season experiences dramatic daily variations that can bring everything from snow squalls to warm, sunny afternoons within single 24-hour periods. This variability requires constant adaptation and flexibility, as communities must be prepared for winter conditions one day and spring activities the next. The unpredictability becomes part of April's charm and challenge. Community preparation during April focuses on readying for spring's agricultural season, as families organize tools, plan planting schedules, and coordinate community activities that will occupy the coming growing season. Seeds are examined and prepared for planting, with families sharing varieties and planning crop rotations that will maximize production and soil health. These preparations require extensive knowledge and careful planning that will determine summer success. The first emerging plants during April provide both practical resources and psychological benefits that help communities complete their transition from winter survival to spring productivity. Early greens like dandelions and wild garlic provide essential vitamins after months of preserved foods, while their appearance confirms that the earth is indeed awakening from winter's sleep. Children particularly enjoy searching for and gathering these first spring foods. Animal behavior during April reflects the season's energy and optimism, as livestock respond to longer days and warming temperatures with increased activity and changed routines. Pregnant animals begin giving birth to spring offspring, requiring careful attention and providing hope for increased productivity in the coming year. Wild animals become more visible as they emerge from winter shelters and begin more active foraging and territorial behaviors. Cleaning during April becomes a community-wide activity as families take advantage of warming weather to accomplish tasks that have been impossible during winter's harshest months. Homes that have been sealed against cold for months are opened for airing and deep cleaning. Clothes and bedding that have provided winter comfort are washed and prepared for storage or continued use. This spring cleaning provides both practical benefits and psychological renewal. The beauty of April landscapes creates daily displays that remind medieval communities of nature's resilience and artistic capabilities. Bare trees begin showing the subtle green haze of emerging leaves, creating a soft beauty that contrasts with winter's stark branches. Early flowers begin appearing, their bright colors particularly striking after months of white and brown landscapes. These beauty displays provide inspiration and hope that sustain spirits through the demanding work of seasonal transition. Water abundance during April replaces the careful conservation required during winter, as melting snow and spring rains provide ample supplies for all household needs. However, this abundance brings new challenges, as communities must manage flooding and erosion while also taking advantage of increased water availability for cleaning, construction, and agricultural preparation. Water management skills become crucial for protecting homes and crops. The social dynamics of April communities reflect the anticipation and energy that characterize the season, as people begin implementing plans made during winter's contemplative months. Work groups form for spring activities, marriage plans finalized during winter are implemented, and community projects that have waited for good weather are organized and begun. The cooperative skills developed during winter's survival challenges adapt to spring's productive opportunities. Traditional April celebrations in medieval communities often focus on marking winter's end and welcoming spring's return through festivals and religious observances that strengthen community bonds while also providing psychological benefits. These celebrations create formal recognition of seasonal change while also preparing communities mentally and spiritually for the demanding but rewarding work that spring and summer will bring. Health considerations during April focus on helping people transition from winter's confined lifestyle to spring's more active demands. Bodies that have adapted to limited movement need gradual conditioning for agricultural work. Traditional medicine emphasizes cleansing and strengthening treatments that prepare people for increased physical activity while also addressing ailments that may have developed during winter's challenging months. The gradual warming during April allows for outdoor activities that have been impossible for months, providing psychological benefits that help communities complete their transition from winter endurance to spring productivity. Children can play outside for extended periods, adults can work outdoors comfortably, and families can gather in outdoor spaces that have been unusable for months. These activities provide crucial mental health benefits. Navigation during April requires adaptation to changing conditions as familiar landmarks emerge from snow cover but mud and flooding create new obstacles to travel. Medieval people developed skills for traveling safely during spring thaw, reading subtle signs that indicate safe passage and avoiding areas where melting and flooding create dangerous conditions. These skills become essential for maintaining community connections during the transition period. Tool preparation during April becomes intensive as families ready equipment for spring planting and construction activities. Agricultural tools that have been maintained during winter are finally sharpened and organized. Building tools are prepared for repair and construction projects that have waited for good weather. This preparation requires extensive knowledge of tool maintenance and represents crucial investment in seasonal productivity. As April progresses toward its end and spring's full arrival, medieval communities experience a profound sense of renewal and possibility. Having successfully survived winter's complete trial and navigated the transition challenges, people emerge ready for the productive demands of the growing season. The approaching spring represents not just the end of winter's trials but the beginning of opportunities for growth, prosperity, and community development that will occupy the coming months. The final transition arrives like a whispered promise fulfilled, as winter's long rain gently yields to spring's tender emergence, bringing with it the profound peace that comes from knowing the cycle of seasons continues its eternal dance of challenge and renewal. This is the time when medieval communities, having successfully navigated winter's complete trial, begin to experience the deep satisfaction that comes from survival accomplished through skill, cooperation, and endurance. The warming that marks winter's end comes gradually, naturally, like the gentle breathing of the earth as it awakens from its long rest. Each day brings slightly warmer temperatures, slightly longer daylight, and slightly more obvious signs that the world is preparing to burst forth into new life. Medieval people, having lived through winter's complete experience, develop a profound appreciation for these subtle changes that modern heated homes cannot replicate. The light during these transition days takes on a quality that seems to glow from within, illuminating landscapes that are slowly transforming from winter's stark beauty to spring's emerging abundance. This light brings with it a sense of hope and renewal that penetrates deep into human consciousness, providing psychological healing for communities that have endured months of darkness and difficulty. The gradual lengthening of days creates anticipation and energy that prepare people for spring's demanding activities. The sounds of returning life create a symphony that grows more complex and beautiful each day, as birds return from their winter territories and begin the songs that will accompany spring's arrival. Water moves everywhere as snow melts and streams reawaken, creating the liquid music that signals winter's retreat. These sounds provide constant comfort and hope, reminding listeners that the natural cycles continue their eternal progression toward renewal and abundance. The first emerging plants provide both practical nutrition and spiritual renewal, as early greens appear to offer essential vitamins after months of preserved foods. The sight of green shoots pushing through soil that seemed frozen forever creates moments of wonder and gratitude that connect medieval people directly to the miracle of seasonal renewal. These first foods taste like hope itself, providing nourishment for both body and spirit. Community relationships that have been forged and strengthened through winter's shared challenges now prepare to adapt to spring's different demands, maintaining the cooperation and mutual support that have ensured survival while also preparing for the more dispersed activities that growing season will require. The bonds created through winter's trials become the foundation for spring's productivity, ensuring that communities emerge stronger and more connected than they entered winter's test. The beauty of transitional landscapes provides daily reminders of nature's artistic capabilities and the rewards that come to those who endure difficult seasons with grace and cooperation. Snow retreats gradually, revealing earth that has been protected and enriched by winter's covering. Trees begin showing the subtle signs of awakening that promise eventual leafing. Early flowers emerge to create splashes of color that seem particularly brilliant after months of winter's restrained palette. The psychological impact of winter's successful completion creates profound satisfaction and confidence that will sustain medieval communities through future challenges. Having proven their ability to survive and even thrive during nature's most demanding season, people develop faith in their skills, their community relationships, and their ability to handle whatever challenges future seasons might bring. This confidence becomes a permanent addition to individual and community character. The management of transition activities requires careful attention as communities shift from winter survival mode to spring productivity, ensuring that the skills and routines developed during difficult months are preserved while also preparing for the different demands that growing season will bring. This transition requires wisdom and flexibility, maintaining what has worked while adapting to new opportunities and challenges. The first outdoor activities in comfortable weather provide psychological benefits that help complete the transition from winter's confined lifestyle to spring's expansive possibilities. Children can play outside for extended periods without risk, adults can work outdoors comfortably, and families can gather in spaces that have been unusable for months. These activities restore spirits and provide crucial mental health benefits that prepare people for productive seasons ahead. Water abundance replaces the careful conservation required during winter's harshest months, as melting snow and spring rains provide ample supplies for all needs while also creating the conditions necessary for agricultural success. The sound and sight of flowing water everywhere provides constant reassurance that the earth is indeed awakening and preparing to support new life and growth. The renewal of hope becomes perhaps the most important product of winter's successful completion, as communities that have proven their ability to survive and cooperate through difficulty now face the future with confidence and anticipation. This hope extends beyond simple seasonal change to encompass faith in human resilience, community cooperation, and the reliable progression of natural cycles that make long-term planning possible. Traditional celebrations of winter's end provide communities with formal recognition of their achievements while also preparing them psychologically for the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead. These observances strengthen community bonds while also providing spiritual framework for understanding seasonal cycles as part of larger patterns of growth, challenge, and renewal that give meaning to human experience. The gradual warming allows for activities that restore physical fitness and prepare bodies for spring's more demanding work, as people who have adapted to winter's limited movement begin conditioning themselves for agricultural activities. This physical renewal parallels the psychological benefits of successful winter completion, creating overall health and vigor that support productive engagement with coming opportunities. As the final days of winter give way to spring's undeniable arrival, medieval communities experience the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing they have successfully completed one of nature's greatest tests. The skills developed through necessity become permanent additions to individual and community knowledge. The relationships strengthened through shared challenge provide social foundations that will support future prosperity. The confidence gained through successful endurance creates resilience that will serve communities through all future seasons. The cycle prepares to begin again, but those who have successfully navigated winter's complete trial now understand that they possess the knowledge, skills, and community bonds necessary to face whatever challenges future seasons might bring. This understanding brings profound peace and confidence that transforms not just seasonal experience but the entire approach to life's inevitable challenges and opportunities. As sleep begins to claim consciousness, the lessons of winter's survival and the promise of spring's renewal merge into dreams that carry the deep wisdom of seasonal cycles, community cooperation, and human resilience. The medieval understanding of winter's brutal challenges balanced by its gifts of contemplation, community building, and spiritual development provides a template for finding meaning and growth within any of life's difficult seasons. The gentle transition into sleep mirrors the natural progression from winter's challenges to spring's renewal, carrying consciousness into rest with the confidence that comes from understanding both the power of endurance and the certainty of renewal. Dreams filled with the wisdom of seasonal cycles provide restorative rest that prepares the dreamer for whatever challenges and opportunities await in the cycles of life that continue beyond winter's end. In the quiet darkness that follows winter's trial and spring's promise, consciousness rests in the profound peace that comes from understanding human resilience, community cooperation, and the eternal cycles that govern both seasonal change and the deeper rhythms of existence itself. Sleep arrives naturally, gently, carrying with it the accumulated wisdom of winter survived and spring anticipated, providing the rest necessary for engaging fully with life's continuing opportunities for growth, service, and joy. The final surrender to sleep comes with the trust that winter has taught and spring has confirmed, that even the most challenging seasons eventually yield to renewal, that community cooperation can overcome individual hardship, and that the natural cycles that govern seasonal change also provide reliable patterns for navigating all of life's transitions with grace, wisdom, and hope for the continuing dance of challenge and renewal that makes existence both meaningful and beautiful.